Hello, Nikola and Tye. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for coming on Tomorrow Talk. You guys both come from very interesting backgrounds in film. Tye, you've starred in films like Ready Player One, and Nikola, you're a VFX expert and filmmaker, and you both came together to co-found Wonder Dynamics, which is essentially modernizing the way special effects are created and movies are made with AI. So I'm very excited to get into it today, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I think just to kind of begin and dive into it, like what are your individual personal stories that led you here and to kind of partner around this project, Wonder Dynamics?
Sure, I'll start. So I'm Tye, and Nikola and I met 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, working on a film. And I got into acting in films just kind of on a whim. I was going to a small public school in my hometown in East Texas, and these casting directors came through the school, and they were looking for kids to audition for this Terrence Malick movie called The Tree of Life. And they ended up recruiting like 10,000 kids in the state of Texas to audition for this film. And then I ended up going to one of these auditions, like I said, on a whim. My parents said, well, why don't you go to this audition? You could always tell people you get to audition for a film one day. I went, ended up getting cast in the film, and it kind of, so that was like my foray into working in film. And then it wasn't really like I was a child actor or anything. It was kind of something I did occasionally. When I was 14, going on 15, worked on my second film, which is a movie called Mud. And then, from there it was like, it just opened my eyes to a whole new world that I never knew existed really. And, but I would always love storytelling, since day one, I was always writing my own stories, and my, it was just part of our culture and my family. People would sit around the campfire and tell stories. So took that passion into film, found an avenue and chased it. And then, I was working on this film when I think I was 16, and Nikola and I met. It was a movie called Last Days in the Desert. And then we just kind of bonded over our mutual love of filmmaking, storytelling, and both writing projects at the time, sharing stuff with each other. And so that's really where it started. We started collaborating on a few projects, and I'll let you tell your side.
I think for me it was kind of similar. I wanted to, be a storyteller my whole life, and I wanted to direct movies when I was really young. But couldn't really afford the equipment. But I had internet connection, so I started watching these VFX tutorials really at a really young age. I wanted to make films with visual effects, and then it took me many years to get here and break in the industry. I moved here. I'm originally from Serbia. Was born in Bosnia and lived in Croatia, and then I moved here about 40 years ago. Started working in visual effects. Worked on indie films, commercials, and for me, visual effects were always a bit of a thing that was really attracted me about the industry. But they're really expensive, so a lot of indie filmmakers avoid it, right? Just because of the price tag. So I would usually work in certain projects that had some kind of innovation aspect to it, whether it's software or hardware. And then how we started this. Honestly, it was a bit of a selfish reason at the beginning. We wanted to make films, and every time Tye and I wrote films, we wrote sci-fi or big CG films that, we realized we would need $100 million, $200 million to make. And that's that kind of problem that we had with, high barrier of entry of this industry. That was always so frustrating. And we stumbled upon AI. Really, our first product with the company was more of an interactive nature. This thing that you can go watch a show like a murder mystery, and then you can switch and have a conversation with that character. And we used AI then to generate a scene. We partnered with this one company, and that kind of conversational AI just wasn't there yet. But we called visual AI for the scene. This was 2018, and there was no term for generative AI back then. So, but we really saw it as a big change, kind of the future of filmmaking. So Tye and I spoke. We were like, let's get and go this route because it's going to be future of filmmaking. And as we started building it, a few months in, we realized, okay, this is bigger than us. So let's make a platform so everybody can use it and make these films that are traditionally reserved for big studios. And that was about 3.5 years or more. And we knew it was going to take us a while to make it. We really wanted to build that end-to-end solution. We just launched about a month ago. So.
Congratulations. I saw that you guys launched Wonder Studio. What was the kind of industry standard for how special effects were done before? And then what is the idea with Wonder Studios?
We saw the biggest problem. You have a lot of hardware equipment you need in production. And for instance, if you're putting a CG character in your scene, you need mocap suits. You've probably seen this avatar with funny looking pajamas. And that's just to pick up animation. Then you have to go and pick up these, you have this reflective ball that you put in that you got the light information. Then you have to tell the actor to move, shoot that same shot without an actor. We call it clean plate. So that's only on production side. And in post-production, there's so many manual labor steps, that you need to do. Clean up on animation, lighting and compositing is mostly what I've done in my career. You have to do frame by frame, shot by shot. So it's a really complex and expensive, step. That's why you have these movies that have, sometimes they'll cost $20,000 for a second to get that quality, and you spend up to 2 years of it. So for us, it was, how do we do this that you can just do that out of a camera?
Yeah.
So,
I recently saw Avatar 2 and it was amazing, but I read that it was the highest budget film ever, potentially. And
a lot of people.
think it would have been probably very different if they could have used Wonder Studios type of technology.
Well, James Cameron is a genius. So for him, like the fact, what we see on the screen, times 8 of that is what they've shot, and they've used AI in there. It's just that people don't see the AI that's being developed inside of these big studios, right? So for us, it was, let's put in a web browser, let's make it, it can be easier. So, I can't say that for James Cameron movies because, he is, a modern day genius. So.
Okay, that's fair. So this is almost the more, like, even though you'll work with Hollywood films, it's also more accessible and democratized.
That's the idea behind
that AI
it.
just built for those types of films.
And we just worked on a movie with the Russo brothers. It's a Netflix film called Electric State. And, it's really, really high budgeted film. Our goal is to work with these filmmakers at the top of their game to learn how they do stuff in pipelines, so then we can transfer that into our solution and really allow independent filmmakers to make it.
Yeah. You guys have been working on this for like 3.5 years. At that point, like, what made you even think like this is going to be possible?
Well, we were sharing these research papers back and forth, and we were looking at research papers from the field of robotics and autonomy, these image perception models. And as we dove deeper into it, I mean, we do not come from this industry. So it was like us looking at it from the outside and thinking about it with our filmmaking hats on and just thinking, oh my gosh, film is just 24 images a second. This is definitely going to be part of visual effects in the future. And so I think just having that hunch, and the more and more we got into it, the more and more we researched, the more and more we became bullish on AI and that it would definitely inevitably be a part of filmmaking.
And I think, machine learning has been used in the VFX industry for a while. It's just very different, very tech heavy, much slower, not as accessible, right? So for us, we really wanted to build that end-to-end solution.
You guys don't consider yourself a generative AI company, correct?
Well, I think, we have about 25 models that we use. For us, we didn't want to build something that's like 2D to 2D. All these generative AIs are generating art out of the trainings material, right? For us, it was really important to keep the pipeline in place of existing artists. So, the character, CG character, is still made by an artist. The shot is still shot by a cinematographer. The reason why we did it that way, because I think, even though I do believe this approach, text to video and stuff like that, will be the future, for us, there is a reason why you have these pipelines in place, why these movies are made like that. Because we are at the space of generative AI. For generative AI to be used in film, you need to be able to edit it. Right now, the ability of generative AI is not there. It's in 2D space, and when you shoot a movie with CG, you're going to do we call it in visual effects passes. Sometimes you're going to do 25 passes because the director is going to want to change the camera a little bit of a light, a little bit of your performance. That's just really hard to do in a 2D space, right? So for us, it was, if we do make AI, we can't make a black box. We need to make it here and then pull these elements that artists need, right, that they can plug it in their pipeline and then work, much, much faster, but work in the system that a lot of, studio films and indie films are used to doing it. So that was really important for us.
The problem is that you have thousands and thousands of artists working on the same film, and they're working in a specific workflow in specific softwares in 3D space. So these studios have a really hard time adopting new technology if it doesn't fit into their workflow. They can't just stop production to adopt these new technologies and completely change the way that it's done. You have to be adaptable to that. So I think everything that we build is with filmmaking in mind, and with the artist in mind. So even down to like, you're gonna get better results if you have better input. So if the shot's nice, if the performance is very animated, and it usually helps the retargeting to CG characters. So in every aspect of what we do, it's really depends on the art that's kind of inputted
Yeah,
to
it's
the
the movie
system.
magic, like with
Yeah.
everything you make. I mean, there is obviously generative AI elements in our workflow as well, but we did wanted to build something we call foundational technology, which is really scene understanding. The more I can understand things out of footage, the more I can manipulate it. And for us, we just went with a bet that we need to stay in 3D space for first, and then eventually we'll add these elements. That's a combination. And I think no, no tool will replace the entire process by itself. It really
Yeah.
needs to be a combination. Once you put it in the hands of artists, then you realize, oh, I'm going to use this for concept. I'm going to use this for animation. I'm going to use this for this. And we're already seeing people doing that, right? Combining multiple tools. What's exciting now for me is that, traditionally in the film industry, you had VFX houses that would innovate, right? But they don't have that many engineers. And it's kind of film-based, right? But now you have entire Silicon Valley of innovators sharing open source and building tools. So yes, there's going to be an exponential growth in innovation, which will change completely and open up tools for people to create films that usually they weren't able to. That's what really inspired us to do this. Is as you say, those kids. That's what excites us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys ultimately want to sell to like everyone from, like the kid in their bedroom that's like interested in being a filmmaker to the Joe Russos of the world. As you sort of start creating partnerships with like traditional Hollywood people, how has the entertainment industry sort of like welcomed these new technologies, both on like the VFX designer side and also on the actors?
You have people that have different feelings about technology and film. I know you touched on it just a second ago, but I think Hollywood is notoriously standoffish to new technology. But it's so funny because the two things go directly hand in hand.
I think technology has always pushed film. If you look out through history, right? Indie filmmaking wouldn't exist if it wasn't for digital camera, right? CG and Pixar films wouldn't exist if the 90s we didn't have progression, on computer chips,
It's true. I
etc.
feel like film and technology are viewed as these like very separate industries, but they're like
But-
completely
Oh yeah.
connected.
Well,
I feel
since
like
the advent of a camera.
This industry actually started because of innovation in a way, meaning, Edison company invented cameras and projectors, but it wasn't Edison, it was people who worked with him. And they had these Nickelodeons, which called it was a nickel to go watch these movies. And some of the first movies were, a train robbery or the guy puts a gun at the end of you and people were freaking out. It was an experience. It wasn't so much of a story. People were like, it's real. He pointed a gun. People were passing out in theaters, early theaters. But what happened is Edison had a full-on monopoly. So it was in New York and New Jersey, and every filmmaker had to pay license fee for the camera, for the film, and it was only shown in Nickelodeons, which belonged to him. And so basically filmmakers got together and they were like, we don't want to do that. We want to create our own art. We don't want to ask for permission. So they get together to avoid lawyers in New York. They moved across the country, found a small town called Hollywood, where they could film in multiple locations. They can get snow, they can get beach, they can get desert. But most importantly, they were outside of the IP law of the camera, so they can go and start movies without paying license fee to the Edison company. That's how Hollywood started.
Wow, that's an awesome story.
And if you look at filmmakers like James Cameron or Steven Spielberg, I mean, these guys have been at the forefront of the industry and really pushing the boundaries of technology and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in storytelling and filmmaking. And that can't be had without new technology. So I think there are people that understand innovation, they understand, and they use it to their advantage to make and tell better stories. So I think those are the people, we really try to target in the industry and try to work with and develop a partnership. I think also it's like, people have a hesitancy around AI. It's, as you said, in the past 6 months, it's become something very tangible.
Yeah.
I think also the studios are careful because of the copyright issue with a lot of generative AI, which they need to be, right? If they don't know where the data is coming and they generate something, it's an issue. Like, whose IP is this now, right?
So I guess like Midjourney and Stability recently had a lawsuit brought against them for like scraping the internet and using that as training data for their models.
That's why we stayed on the aspect of like, we're not training data on other art. That CG character is made by an artist, that shot is shot by a... So for us, it's like more solutions that are speeding up the process a lot, right? And so a lot of things we train on synthetic data and some optimization model that we build in-house. And even though everything's coming out really fast, I think that's also a lot of public perception. A lot of these tools that come out, you look at the research paper for 6 months ago and you see it. We've been reading different websites than what people are reading on public, right? So, sometimes you'll see something come out and you can go and papers with code and you can find something similar and you realize what inspired this tool, right? So it is moving much faster and it's exciting. But I think there's also a lot of, hype around it right now.
You both have spent years in the filmmaking industry. How's it been like entering technology? Like you're sort of talking to a whole new set of people.
It's been interesting, we're still film adjacent what we're doing. So I think people are maybe interested in our perspective because of the industry that we come from, and we make sure that stays our mission, and that's the heart of the company. Is like we're building technology to help storytellers, to help artists. So that never changes. But yeah, it's been a learning curve. Both of us are first-time founders, and if you would have asked me like 10 years ago, or if you told me 10 years ago that we would be here now and we'd have this company, I would just laugh.
Yeah, I think for me, I was obsessed with technology at a young age. My two loves were storytelling and innovation. So I think that's why I landed in visual effects, because it's the closest thing that had combination of two, right? Because there's so much innovation in visual effects. That's why there's a lot of fear now from artists, but VFX artists are really good at adapting. There's a lot of tools that come out every year that they have to learn, right? A lot of upgrades. So I don't know. I think there's so much creativity in both fields.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how much creativity there is in engineering, right? And coding. It's just different language than film. So
on that point, for like VFX designers specifically, if it makes them a lot more efficient at their job, like what do you think is the end result in terms of the types of content being made, where people are spending time?
Yeah, I think for us, the way we see it, a lot of VFX artists get in film to be creative, but then they get stuck with these very objective, non-creative, very technical, nitty-gritty, monotone jobs. And most of artists don't like that, right? Most artists want to be involved in creative choices. So I think the whole point is that we speed up art and then we just leave. That's the whole promise of AI, to let us be more creative, right? Let the machine do those things that are boring so we can be creative on those aspects.
Yeah, I feel like there's this whole tension of like AI has now become creative in a way people didn't think it would be.
Yeah.
And so like human creativity is not needed, but obviously that's
No,
not.
I think
that's not.
What's gonna happen is, and like I was saying that the other day, is that people say like, okay, studios are done, this is gonna replace it. No, what's gonna happen is studios will figure out a way to make greater and bigger things that we cannot make, and then indie filmmakers will make things that usually they were avoiding, because the entry level right now is that indie filmmakers really stay away from CG at all, and now they'll be able to do it. There's a lot of Hollywood is not creative, they're doing a lot of superhero stuff. I think what people don't understand, if you make a movie that's 250 million, you got to make 500 million to break even, right? So they have to make a movie that's 80-year-old and a 50-year-old is going to like, right? And I say this a lot. What's going to happen now, and what we think is going to happen, we would like to happen, is that now studios will be able to make a big space odyssey that's an art film that's grounded. It's kind of A24 with a Marvel cinematic look.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And that you need tools for that, because there's still a big gap between our imagination and what we can make. Because you read a script.
It's true. I feel like up-to-date indie films have this very certain aesthetic. And I think like from someone that's not in it, you just think like, oh, that's what they want to make. But it is so expensive.
It's a cost thing.
And even growing up in LA, I feel like there's been this interesting divide I've seen where I have so many friends that went into filmmaking and then also friends that went into music. And even though music has its like labels and all of that, I do feel like it's easier to break in a way, because like the equipment isn't that expensive and you can like put out your own music on Spotify, TikTok, SoundCloud, whatever it is, versus filmmaking. There's still such strict gatekeepers.
Yeah, you can make music alone in your room.
True.
But
but I did think, sorry to interrupt, I did think that's a good point, because I think what's going to happen, the problem with music now, is there's a lot, and it's really hard to be noticed in a noise, because you have distributor like Spotify and them, that there's more artists now. It's easier to make, but there's more people doing it. Potentially we'll see that with AI. If generative AI break through how we think it is, it's going to be more people making it, but it's going to be harder to get noticed, right? So like if everybody's making it, so there's a little bit
because
of
there'll be more good content. Is the idea?
there's gonna be more.
There's going to be more
content in
content, more good content. I don't know. That's
I don't know. All I'm trying to say, I do relate to musicians because it's really hard to break in. Like it's not as hard to make content, but it's really hard to break in. Meaning, get a record label, get people to listen.
I guess
to music.
my rebuttal is I think it's even harder for actors and actresses. That's what at least.
It's because you have an actor here.
No. But
that.
I think I've.
Were you acting as well? Is that what it is?
No.
Okay.
I guess I just am people in my life. I feel like you're always waiting for someone to say yes to you, and there's so much money behind projects.
Yeah, acting is a lot like starting a company. You got to get used to hearing the word no a lot. You're going to get a lot of no's before you start getting yeses. And
he says that as from his 11 years of experience, where he got a yes when he was 11 years old.
Oh, no.
A lot of no's.
There was
when he was 9,
a lot of no's.
When he was 9, someone really rejected him.
Tye, so on this, I'm curious, the discussions you're having with people on the acting side of things, like there's these deep fakes of AI, Brad Pitt or whoever it is. Do you see a world where any movies will be completely AI generated?
Like completely AI generated?
Like someone would just take Tye Sheridan's face and lease it
Or
out.
do you mean just in the performance? Like in someone's likeness, someone
someone sitting at home.
I think the more like the interesting opportunities there are like to de-age or age someone or someone who's deceased, bringing them back and using their likeness in a performance. I think there's ethically, there's a question around that. I mean, obviously you would have to you need a family's permission and want to respect that person and their legacy. But,
did you see that movie Simone with Al Pacino? He invented an actor that's not real. It's an AI, and everybody thinks that she exists. It's a cool movie. I do think there's going to be movies that are completely AI generated. Do I think it's right that the actors will sit at home and license their likeness? No. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it's happening.
Also, I guess when actors have to gain a lot of weight or lose a lot of weight for a role, like if in terms of like changing appearance,
right,
that might make it
of
healthier.
Course.
If you don't have to.
I think so. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
AI is actually really looking after the actors because they're endangered species, Just
actors, you guys heard it here.
Bored actors.
Right now, you guys are focused on filmmaking. And it seems like you're really tailoring that product to be like ideal for filmmakers of all shapes and sizes. But the ultimate vision for Wonder Dynamics, do you see a world in which you would go into gaming, other types of content creation?
People are already using it for gaming. I think because the whole principle of like cinematics or making a game, you still need motion capture. You still need to make it. So, we're definitely, already seeing that use case, and we're our job is to provide tools, and how the artists use it, it's really up to them. I think storytelling is storytelling, whether you're making a game or a movie. I mean, we're seeing like so much merging between gaming and film, right? Sometimes these cinematics, you see these cinematics the kids make on YouTube, you're like, this looks like a really high-end production film, right? Because of Unreal Engine and what Epic Games is doing. And Epic Games is a partner of ours, they're investors. So,
I saw they invested in you guys. Also, they recently launched MetaHuman.
Funny story. The guy that made MetaHumans, Vlad, is from my hometown in Serbia.
No way.
Yeah, and so we
have more than just Vlad.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying he started Trilateral, and we work really closely with them. We have we're remote, but we also have offices in Serbia, and they're down the street from us. So we've been working really closely with them. And one of the reasons we really like Epic Games is because they understand storytellers and content creators, and they back them. And I think artists are very sensitive with corporations, right? Artists don't like corporations that they think are just for the money. They're very emotional about what they make, right? For a reason. They put a lot of effort, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be a financial reward when you're an artist. It's a very risky profession, right? So when you have corporations like that at Epic that really understand that, and they stand behind them, and they, usually Epic buys a company and they lower the prices of a share between, the artist and what they're getting. So I think that's something,
Do
you think people would ever use it for virtual reality?
What we're doing or MetaHumans?
Our tool.
Should I continue the Epic Games?
Surely could. They surely could.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Tye, personally, do you believe everyone will have a VR headset in 10 years?
I believe.
Be careful. Ready Player 2, you know.
No, I don't know if Oh man,
If
I don't know
you
if I
don't
want to
know.
say
Yeah,
this,
very
but
hard question.
I will say that I don't think the obstruction in front of the eyes is the future of virtual reality. I think the future of virtual reality is something different, something
The
that's
glass.
non-obtrusive.
But isn't it glass in Ready Player One? It sees through and then it
Yeah,
closes, right?
but still, I mean, if you think about like the cumbersome nature of something over your face,
Right.
over your eyes, this, you know, an inch away from
Yeah.
your eye, it's surely not.
I think once like augmented reality technology gets better, it's just hard. That would be.
I
That
think
would
so
be
too. I
good.
think that what's going to start first is our computers. Once we have our computers to be, you know, in AR, then we're going to go more in entertainment. I think we try to do the other way around. But I do think like right now we're looking at everything we use through this screen. That's very primitive if you think about it. And a lot of young people are bored with just watching that. They're really immersed in their Fortnites and their, you know, Roblox and stuff they're doing. So I think once we get this next generation that grew up with an iPhone, that to them like touching a 2D screen is boring.
Yeah.
You know, once that generation grows up, then we'll be like, okay, my personal computer is something completely reimagined.
Yeah.
But I do think what happened with VR was that we just didn't see strong enough content with
It
it.
was also not that the infrastructure wasn't really there either. I think that both are big problems, right? What we were doing on Ready Player One was so cool because we were, for the first time, this was 2016, right around the same time we were finishing some of our first product demos. So,
This is before AI because our first product wasn't AI.
yeah, it was an kind of interactive nature. But anyway, we were walking into the motion capture volume. And when you walked into this volume wearing the motion capture suit in the Vicon system, it would spatially track you and you could drive your character on a monitor. So not only could you see yourself driving the character, your avatar, on a monitor, but you could put on a tethered VR headset that was spatially tracking through the volume.
Wow.
And you could walk around mock-up versions of the environment that you would be in. And you could walk up to characters and see how tall they were and see how broad they were. And you really got as an actor in motion capture, you really got a sense of what this world could be like. You really got to envision it. Of course, like when you're acting, you got to take it off.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's just four white walls again
That's
in an
crazy.
empty studio. So you really have to rely on the imagination. But it was such a helpful tool. You know, they had in the past on other motion capture films where you could see yourself driving your character in real time. But this was the very first film that actually allowed you to walk through the environment, spatially tracking, walk around characters with a VR headset. So that, I think that was so cool at the time.
If you guys could go back and give your self advice 3.5 years ago, what would it be?
Here's what I would say, and I'm curious what you would say, but I would say
To yourself or to me?
No, to both of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe even like further back, like going back like 5 years when we first started the company. We are storytellers at heart. Like that's what we do well, you know. And I think when we first started the company, I think we didn't totally understand how to tell our story. And we understood the value in stories, but for some reason when we were trying to pitch our company, it was like that we struggled with that, oddly enough. And when that came together, you know, that is where we really started to see success. That's where when people found our story emotionally compelling, they wanted to be a part of it. And so really like crafting that. And sometimes it takes a long time to define what your story is, but it's once you refine it, it's really like, that's to me the most essential part of like what's allowed us to be successful with people and like sharing our vision and people getting behind that. But what would you say?
I mean, I think what you're saying, it was also discovery mode for us a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it was. I maybe would like, you know, selfishly say for me personally, I think two things. One is there's a lot of times you meet people from big companies that just don't get your vision early enough, but you really want that acceptance or recognition. What I learned is like, have your North Star and really be focused in your vision. People won't understand until they see it. And really, we saw this with our product. We've been building it for a while. So we had demos even 1.5 years ago that look close to what we have now. And sometimes people wouldn't get it.
People also didn't get it because they didn't understand the problems that were, they're big problems,
yeah.
but they're niche. You know, they're very big, expensive problems, but people that don't like peek behind the curtain of post-production on these huge $200+ million movies, they don't understand the problems.
Well, not everybody understands the filmmaking process, right?
That's
So that's
Most
kinda
people
special.
don't.
Yeah, especially in visual effects, right?
Well, they're all often surprised at how long it takes. Like even when I have people, family members or friends that come visit a set for the first time, they hang out for like 10 minutes and then they're so bored. They're like, oh my God, everything just takes
this is
so long.
slow.
This is so slow. This is how long it
I mean,
takes.
because
to
you
shoot a
see
scene.
behind the scenes and
Yeah.
they're cut like they're such summaries, you know. So I
Do you
think,
guys
yeah,
ever see yourself making a movie together with Wonder Dynamics, or
Oh, for sure.
this is why we
eventually
started.
becoming
this
kind
is,
of
we're,
This is
we're
why we
more of a
started.
A
story.
Pixar?
We definitely
That would be
admire.
nice.
That would be really nice. We definitely admire Pixar and always kind of were fascinated by their story and inspired by their story.
I mean, they were so successful because they applied a lot of knowledge out of Silicon Valley into
Yeah.
their process. So yeah, we actually started this so we can create films, you know. So for us, the focus was technology. We plan to open up a studio and produce and make movies using technology, because the idea was always, what if I can make film for 3 and 5 million that looks like 40?
Yeah.
That's what started for us. Me personally, I'm a Isaac Asimov, you know, I'm obsessed with his story, so I always wanted to make films with robots, right? So, you know, I haven't seen many movies, you know, that have these point of views of a robot, right? So that's kind of what started for me.
It's so funny because the last interview I did, the founder referenced that as like one. I think it's crazy how sci-fi is not far off in predicting sort of future technologies.
yeah.
No, I think sci-fi, especially like art imitates, right? And it predicts life a lot, right? Life
Yeah.
imitates art. So I think a lot of things we'll read, it will stay subconscious, because it's easy to imagine something, really hard to create it, right?
Okay, I wanna in our last sort of section of today's pod, I wanna go into some popcorn questions.
Is that how you call it, pod?
Popcorn
Pod.
questions.
Popcorn questions, guys.
Let's go.
Okay, so we're gonna start with some co-founder questions. We'll start very
Right.
nice. What is your favorite thing about working with Tye?
Oh,
Ah, this is terrible. Start with that.
well, he was just telling me on the way over here. What is-
No, I think for me, we're a really good balance to each other. Tye really understands this industry. You know, I understand it from a technical standpoint and story standpoint, but he understands it from a, you know, being in front of and behind the cameras. But also, I think for me, you know, sometimes I'll get excited about certain things of working with certain people. You know, so it's really good balance because you know, Tye's really good at like looking at things and stopping for a second and being like, is this going to distract us? Should
Yeah.
we go that direction?
It goes
So
both
that's-
ways. I
yeah,
think
that's
both
good.
of us get excited and have to slow the other one down.
But also, we became best friends before we had a company. So, you know, so we know each other so well. So, you know,
Too well.
too well
Besties.
sometimes, yeah.
What's your favorite thing about working with Nikola?
That's too
maybe-
long of a pause. man.
Maybe his your vision for innovation, really. And I think you have an ability to express that clearly. You plant that flag for the North Star. You have great instincts for innovation, and you can build the team up and get people
Well,
excited.
thanks, brother.
Wow, this
That's
is
really
so
nice.
cute. What's the movie that got you interested in filmmaking?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of films that really got me interested in filmmaking. I would say so when I was a kid, I was born in Bosnia, and then we refugeed, you know, when the war started there. But my uncle and my grandma stayed back, and my uncle had a little VHS store, a little rental, you know, a video store, and it was like a little hallway. So when I was a kid, those summers were most exciting for me. And this is a really long answer to a simple question. But the reason I'm
Good
saying
story,
it,
though.
as I was there, you know, he would like leave me. I was 10 years old. He would leave me to work. He would always set it up. He would leave someone come in. I was so nervous. You had to take the VHS tape and put it in a thing. I was freaking out. It's the first money I ever made. He said, whatever you rent, you get to keep, right? So for me, as a kid, I watched a lot of movies. Movies I shouldn't see as a 10-year-old. You know, I watched Life is Beautiful or What Dreams May Come when I was 10 years old. People would be like, oh. You know, I would ask someone, what is this movie? Because we would get new movies that come out. And they're like, you're too young for it. And so, obviously, as soon as the store closed, I had keys. I would go in and I would take that movie and watch it. So there's a lot of, I think for me, it was always a bit movies like AI, Spielberg's AI, and movies that really had a bit of innovation to it and that pushed the boundaries, visual boundaries, as well as the stories.
Yeah, I kind of fell in love with filmmaking through like being on a set because I was 11 years old when I worked on a film for the first time. And before that, I come from a super small town in East Texas. Very, my dad is a UPS driver. My mom was a small business owner. No one in my family was an artist. And it was just a world I never knew. But I always, my mom is very artistic. My mom is actually an amazing painter. And
She's a really good painter.
among a lot of other things, she's a very creative person. So I think like there was always a creative bone in the family. But, for the most part,
Totally.
we were outside, like, so I didn't really fall in love with filmmaking and films until I found myself on a set. And then once I did, I was like, wow, this is a thing. People can do this for a living. And it takes this many people? Well, what does this guy do? What does that girl do? What's her job? And I just became fascinated by the entire process, how many people it took to bring together around this one idea, around a story. And all of them put all this time and effort into this one thing. And they made something beautiful that touched thousands, sometimes millions of people's lives. And they carried that with them forever. That, for me, was profound. And so that's all I wanted to do. And so I think because I didn't come at it from the perspective of, I was doing theater classes and plays and then like just doing the acting. I wanted to be an actor in a film. I just kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
I was just more fascinated by the entire thing, including acting. I've always been interested in, the filmmaking process, the entirety of the filmmaking process, the business, how it works, where the pain points are, where the problems are, we can do to make it easier for people to make films. I want, we both of us are so passionate about helping people tell stories and also helping ourselves tell stories.
The storytelling is really powerful, right? We all get inspired by certain stories we see.
Yeah.
There's this quote I really like by this guy, Robert McKee, and he says, every conflict in the world, whether it's a fight between two people or war, comes from a true inability to be in someone else's shoes, because you don't have time to be in someone else's shoes. You're busy working, and then, you really understand people once you get to spend a lot of time with them and you understand why they're acting a certain way, because everybody's just trying to do best they can in their situations, right? So I think movies are kind of a summary of someone's life, that you can go and see that situation and be like, oh, I kind of understand, like, because I am also human. I do these things, but so for me that's like super. And then on the fun side, like you have movies like Back to the Future where you get to go like, well, what if? What if?
Yeah, beyond living. I mean, beyond just living and breathing. I mean, storytelling may be the oldest tradition we have.
1,000%. Even when you're like writing it on caves.
100%.
Yeah, because it's like humans' ability to survive. It's like how like we pass down like how we do everything. Back to my theater days when I was youngin. I even remember.
I knew you were actors. I knew you actors. I can write.
But she told us that earlier.
No, that's not where this came from. I'll go into that after. But I remember when I was working with our theater teacher and she was like, okay, you have to identify what makes you sad, what makes you happy. Every role you take those and put it into that person. And I feel like it gave me this like permanent devil's advocate mindset for the rest of my life. Like, because I'm always thinking like, oh, this is probably what that person's thinking. Yeah. It's like hard to even identify 100%
your own emotions, empathy is huge,
But it's good.
It's really good. And I see that in a lot of actors, and I see that in Tye. Empathy with other people. Like the better actor you are, the better you can relate to someone's situations. And you know what's funny? From directing and writing, I really love writing. Screenwriting is a passion of mine. Is because to write something honestly, you gotta write it like it's called inside out, writing inside out, writing from that person's perspective. And a lot of writers go learn how to be different individuals and understand their lives so they can write well about it. And you really learn some. And then you dig really deep in yourself. You find things you hate, because you're gonna find every character you have in yourself a bit, right? So.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating, whether it's like a book or a TV show or a movie, especially when it's like from the perspective of the villain and like you're forced to relate to them. I think that's so interesting. Perceived villain, I suppose. Okay, to end on a very sort of futuristic point, like what is most exciting to you about the future? It could be a technology you heard about.
Big question.
It could be your personal life. It could be Wonder Dynamics. It could be anything.
Going to space.
Oh yeah,
space travel. I think it's kind of sad for me personally that we're living in this like time in humanity that we're still really young and we're still stuck on this planet. You know, I can't wait. I'm not gonna be alive, but I can't wait for this future where like, hey, you know how we talk about like you know you're gonna go to Palm Springs for the weekend, like how great it's gonna be when you're like, oh, you're gonna go to Mars, to visit your grandma this weekend, right? That's gonna happen. It's gonna be so exciting when we discover different species.
Let me
and
ask you
travel,
this: do you think it will be in our lifetime, like when space travel becomes just a regular?
You think it's gonna be in our
thing?
lifetime?
I mean,
tourist one. I mean, it's already happening. With,
well, yeah, we'll all have the
SpaceX and everything.
opportunity to go to space.
Would you guys like go into space if Jeff Bezos tomorrow is like, I want you on my
Yes, 100%.
yeah?
Probably. I mean, maybe.
Well, guys,
Maybe if Elon Musk asks.
Yeah,
Jeff,
I don't think everyone wants. I asked someone the other day if they want to go to space.
They said no.
No. Yeah.
I think the world is very beautiful. Like, I'm not obsessed with the concept, but I think it probably changes your perspective on life a little bit, like
Yeah,
seeing the world
sure.
really far away and small. And you probably hold that perspective, like
There
everything
was-
you go into.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's,
there was. I think it was Buzz Aldrin. There was a story about an astronaut that was going on a mission, and he said that they were looking at Earth, and it was just this little blue ball, and he said he put his thumb up like that and covered the entire Earth, and in that instance, I mean, he understood how small we were, and it forever changed his perspective. I
Yeah.
just think, like, if everyone could experience that, if everyone could realize, the unity of that thing, or how, not, I wouldn't say insignificant, but just how small, how much of a speck we are.
1,000%. I think that even there's stories of what the first picture ever taken of the world from space, the global impact it had, like
The
just
blue
in,
marble.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the Voyager, when they had Voyager out and they decided to turn it.
Yeah.
I think, zooming out, super important.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on Tomorrow Talk.
Thanks for having us.
I'm
was fun.
so excited to dive like more into Wonder Studio and use it. There's a
gotta
free
get you
version.
access.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's
there's
still
a
in
free-
beta.
It's
When can we expect for the masses like me to be able
about
to go on it?
4 to 6 weeks. We're gonna
Okay.
open it right now. We have about 200,000 people that sign up in the first month, so we're letting in about 2,000 to 4,000 people a day.
Okay.
So just so we can debug and we can scale it, but we're always gonna have a free version.
Amazing.
So it's gonna be tiers, I think, for us. Yeah.
Okay, I would link your socials. I'll link yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.